Welcome to Point to Rise, your podcast that gives you permission to dream big, take messy action, and turn your talent into profit while turning your back on perfection. My name is Susanne Purcell, high performance and mindset coach, former international ballerina, profitable entrepreneur, and founder of Point to Rise, a movement designed to empower dancers. It is my mission to use my own story as an inspiration for today's generation of dancers. And now sit back, stretch, warm up, or sip your coffee and love learning how much it matters to point at yourself first to rise to all that you are capable of. Hey, Beth. And we're back again. Gina and Susanne here, giving you nuggets and tips and tricks that you can use for aspiring dancers. And if you're still in the studio and training and learning how to become a dancer. Right, Gina? Absolutely. Is that better? I don't know. We're still playing with the intro. So if you guys have any suggestions on what you want to hear, see, this is how we're doing it. We're just putting it right back into our audience. However, and whatever suggestions you have, we want to hear about that. So today we are going to talk all about self-care and the importance of self-care. Now, if you maybe feel like me, the word self-care has been used and perhaps overused at some times, and there might be a stigma around self-care and what it looks like. So we are going to talk about our own experience about self-care and what is perceived as self-care, and how you can use self-care to your advantage, perhaps, to be able to tap really into your true potential. Let's start with a quote. Gina, do you want to start? What do you have?
Sure. I've got a quote here that rest and self-care are so important. When you take time to replenish your spirit, it allows you to serve from that overflow. You cannot serve from an empty vessel.
So, yes, keep going.
Yeah, this just really resonates with me, both as a former professional ballet dancer, but as a human being, as a mother, as a woman. I think this is applicable to us all, that we have to have something to give from. We have to replenish our spirit so that we have something to draw from. And I think oftentimes we put other people first or other priorities, like the dancers can put health and fitness in front of taking care of their physical body and rest, and reconnecting with their soul. So if anything takes the place of that focus on the whole dancer, the whole person, then it starts to deplete the very space from which we give.
I love that. And it is such a foreign, I think, method of thinking that we are opening up here, because let's be honest, and we talked about this prior to hit record, where this belief of that we are tapping into something we wouldn't be able to tap in if we exhaust ourselves over and over and over again physically so much. I had some beliefs coming up for me. It's like, but wait a second, actually, it could be true. But it's not, there is a tiny little truth about it, but it's not about doing it consistently every day. And also, let's ask a better question. Like, what other ways are there so you can tap into your subconscious, into your higher self? You don't necessarily have to tap into the absolute exhaustion phase of your body and basically creating that chemical reaction that really enables us to tap into that higher self. But what other ways are there? And you have so many beautiful meditations. Like, meditation is definitely a way. It can feel uncomfortable. I'm still learning. However, it is much easier on your physical body, because when you are a performer, when you're getting into the studio, you have to be tapping into all of your power. And if you are thinking that you have to exhaust yourself before you're capable of, that's a lie. Did I explain that right?
Yeah, I think you explained it very well. I think some amazing things can come out when we are depleted and we're at the very end. There is still more there. But I think that is different from consistently operating from this space of lack and depravity and, you know, emptiness. I think
Mm.
the better thought pattern perhaps would be, how do I fill myself so that I'm so full that the artistry overflows from what I have inside? And then there are those special times where you get to the point, you're exhausted, you have nothing left to give, and you find something that comes out of that space. But I think from a day in and day out perspective, operating from a source of overflow is a healthier balance.
You know what just came up for me was that um, the beauty that comes out of that exhaustion, or what we're tapping into, is that we don't have the energy at that point to perhaps care what other people think. Like
Mm,
our fears and that clay that we have put around ourselves has no longer something to stick onto, right? Because that energy has been used up and it falls off. I think that is the truly only one thing that comes out of that physical exhaustion, like getting to the point where you don't know where to go now from.
mm.
And that's what came up for me.
Yeah,
So
I like that thought. So my question to you then is, how can we apply self-care to find other ways to tap into that? Maybe it's letting go of people pleasing, or maybe how do we get to that space of we're just giving with no, nothing holding us
mm,
back without having to get to that point of exhaustion?
okay, that is such a great question. How do we get there? I think there's so many different things that can get us there.
And I guess I asked that question because, like you mentioned at the beginning, self care is such an overused word. And now it's like, have a cup of tea, wear a weighted blanket, and all those things are great, but that's not really what self care is. So if you and I can maybe
Yeah.
point ourselves in the direction of what does it really mean to care for ourselves?
So I believe that all of that, weighted blanket and a cup of tea and taking care of your needs, and the way you want to feel, is included into self-care.
Mhm.
Okay. I think society has a little bit put the first layer as the top layer of self-care, meaning that going to get your nails done and your eyelashes done and a massage, and that's self-care.
Mhm.
I believe that there is way more layers, that it goes like 10 layers deep on what it really means to take care of yourself. Um, I truly believe that self-care means putting yourself first, meaning putting that oxygen mask on first before you help anybody else. And that requires a certain level of confidence
Mhm.
and awareness of how you're coming across, how you want to feel, what are your intentions, what are your goals, how do you want to map out your life, and truly understanding that you are the creator, that you are in charge, finding that power again that maybe is in jeopardy right now because you're listening to all of the other people and outside sources that are telling you how to show up and what you're supposed to be and do.
Mhm.
Knowing what is right for you. And that takes a lot of confidence. And that means, what are your boundaries? Like, what are you able to give and get without compromising your core values,
Mhm.
which then means, okay, what are your core values? Have you actually sat down yet and really jotted down or even started the process of really thinking, okay, what are my core values? Where do I want to be in 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? And we don't, here, I'm talking for myself as a 16-year-old self. I was just interested in, okay, how can I the fastest get into a company and perform like a professional? And we underestimate the power of planning and boundaries and understanding ourselves. And with that, self-care. Self-care means, what do I need for myself so I can show up as the very best self? Not for other people, but for me. And yes, it is for other people, of course. You know, it may sound really selfish, meaning that we're self-absorbed and only thinking about ourselves. However, I think we're not doing everybody else a favor if we are showing up as our weakest self, or if we're showing up as a version that, you know, wants to but can't and is grumpy all the time, or is tired or exhausted. That's not how you serve others, right? Like we your actions, if your actions really inspire other people, then you're taking care of yourself and you're helping with taking care of everything that you are. You're helping others to have the permission, perhaps, and the leadership to do the same.
Such a good point that self-care doesn't equal selfishness. It actually equals giving, because when we care for ourselves, when we put our own oxygen mask on first, to use your analogy, we're then better able to care for the people around us. As dancers, we have source to draw from with our artistry. And I love what you just said, that when we practice self-care, it other people see it. It raises us all up. And wouldn't that be something powerful in the dance community if self care, and with a mindset of it's not selfish, it's a way that I can give more as an artist, became the norm, and we inspire each other to live and give from that space.
Do you know what I see, or and what you always talk about, the joy and the happiness and finding joy again in learning, and how could this be fun, even though becoming a dancer is a physically straining process. I think we're not asking the right questions. Like, you know, we're so on the mindset, it's hard, you have to put sacrifices in there, you won't have friends, you know, all of the negative is on becoming that artist. But we're not actually leaning towards the other way and asking the question, okay, how could this be fun? So how can I make it fun for me, in terms of, how do I want to show up today? How do I want to feel today? And if I want to make this fun and exciting, and I want to keep the love that I feel for this art form alive, not only today, but for my entire career. So, what is it that I have to do today to take care of that future version of myself? And that's where values and goals come in so importantly. I think we're not teaching that in school. I think that is something that is so imperative to know, because if you don't have a vision, if you don't know where you're going, you're going to get lost somewhere along the way.
Hmm.
And I feel, and I'm speaking from my own experiences, I got lost in not taking care of myself. I expected everybody else to take care of me.
Hmm.
And I didn't understand that that was actually my most important duty, responsibility,
Yeah.
job to do, you know?
It's interesting because that concept of responsibility came up in our last discussion together. that it is a responsible choice to put ourselves first, to decide to take the time to self-care. And something you just said about joy reminded me that self-care doesn't have to be an hour long thing. It doesn't have to be this checklist of things that you need to do that just adds more things to your day. You know, it could be 5 minutes of meditation, or even, you know, 2 minutes with all the screens off, just being, just sitting there. I think you raise a great point in that finding the joy, finding the fun, this doesn't have to be an arduous task. If you're, a morning person, maybe carve out 10 extra minutes and set your intentions for the day, as you're saying, get yourself in the right frame of mind, um, without having it be this big weight on your day.
Yes, I love that. Do you, and tell me if you can relate to that. I thought I never had time for that. Like, I always had the belief that showing up in the studio and working on my body was my number one priority.
Mm.
And I never made the connection that that was part of it, of becoming a dancer. But there's more to it. It wasn't the number one priority. My number one priority should have, and this is why we're talking, this is what we want to give to you while you're warming up or wherever you're listening to this right now. That knowing and having that hyper focus on how you want to feel is more important than the doing, because the doing will fall in place when you set the attention on how you want to feel. And that starts with feeling worthy of taking care of yourself.
Mm. Beautiful. Yeah.
I didn't say my quote. I forgot my quote.
Oh, you've got to
Yeah. we just got right into it. But here's my quote. Love yourself first and everything else falls in line. You really have to love yourself to get anything done in this world.
Mm.
And can we not attest to that? I had such a resistance to taking care of myself. And here was the story that I had built up. Taking care of me first in order to be there for my children, run in my business, show up in the studio at any given point, or even on stage, was not only selfish, but would not really result in anything that other people could draw from. Like this whole analogy of, the water glass being full, that is what you need in order to be happy and sustaining your existence every day. And whatever falls over, whatever is in the plate that's under that glass, this is what you can give to others.
Mm.
And I just felt like, no, this is not true. This is not true. I have to give everything I've got. And which led me into multiple burnouts. Actually, I spent most of my dancing career, minus the vacations that we had, in a burnout stage.
Mm. It ends.
And that's not where we're our best, right? And we're seeing it as such a pledge of honor that being tired and exhausted and super skinny and sick is a representation of working really hard, and therefore success is just around the corner.
And when we
Don't
don't
fight.
take care of ourselves, our careers become shortened. And the more we age, the better artists we become. So that's really the tragedy of it all. We're not taking the time to care for our minds and souls and bodies. And so our careers are shortened, which shortens the length that we are artists for. We're missing our best work, in our 30s, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And what do you think the reason is for that?
Well, I just think we're used to this idea of, like you said, being exhausted, giving everything and then more. And there hasn't been enough focus on replenishing. Not just like, how do I get stronger? How do I get thinner? But how do I care for my mind? And then how do I care for my soul? Because if we're not tending to those two things as well, then our artistry is flat. And, we can't sustain that over years. Our career will be short. So, without the perspective of caring for our whole self and each one of those parts, we're just shortening our career and probably really stealing a lot of the joy in the process.
Mm, yes, I love that. And I think that's the myth that has been established in the industry for so many decades, that you work your body and you exhaust your body on a daily basis. And that's what is going to bring you into the spotlight. And if this is the mentality that you have been taught and that's something that you believe in, we urge you to rewind and listen to this again, because it is not in the ability of our bodies to perform on its highest level comes from our mind's ability to see the possibilities. And it doesn't take consistent exhaustion to teach your body that. No, you can teach your mind to do so. And with that, you are having lesser injuries. You will find way more joy in doing so. Can I use an example? And I have run a little case study on myself.
Okay.
Okay, so to prove the whole theory, when I was in ballet school, we had to run every day, rain or shine, around the school. It was about a 5K run.
Wow.
Every single morning and every single night.
Oh my goodness.
We would wrap our thighs and our arms and our bellies and our bottoms in plastic foils. So we would be our skinniest. Okay. And I'm talking about rain or shine, 5 kilometers at 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning at like 13, 14.
Wow.
And at the end of the day. So we were at the end of the day exhausted. Like I didn't even know how to run 5 kilometers on either end, but we were not allowed inside until that was completed.
Wow.
Imagine how much I disliked running. I actually can really say that I hated it because I have combined so much ill feelings and sacrifices and pain with that one activity. Okay. And everybody told me, well, you should take up running. And it was one of the reasons why I didn't go work out, because I did not want it to feel the strain on my muscles and the exhaustion, because I associated so much pain and memories with that certain feeling in my body, the exhaustion, that the coming to the point where I can breathe without stopping. Okay. And I realized that that was only a story that I had built up, that I let myself have. So I went back into the fitness studio, actually in Charleston, when we met, you and I. And I got on that treadmill that I couldn't even run on the first couple weeks. And I rewrote my story. And I asked myself, what would this look like if this would actually be fun? Like, is this true? Is your current situation adequate to when you were 13, 14 years old? And I cannot tell you how much mind power it took in the beginning, because literally it was so much easier to fall back into that old belief of like, no, this is hard, it hurts, somebody's going to yell at me, versus, hey, I actually just ran 100 yards without feeling that I'm going to fall over. Good for you, Susie. I am so proud of you. And it takes those little steps. So today I ran 12 minutes in a row. without feeling like I'm keeling over, without having any kind of mind games going on in my conscious mind that wanted me to stop, because I have spent the last 12 weeks on rewriting that story.
Mm.
And I could have run another 12 minutes. I was thinking, oh, you know what? I could run a marathon. I'm like, no, don't get ahead of yourself. However, that thought would have never occurred 12 weeks ago in my head. So my point is that I didn't need to train my body for strength. No, that comes from itself. What I had to do was train my mind to be stronger than anything else. And I think that's where we don't put the right emphasis into. I understand that we all need muscle to sustain our body and flexibility and all of this. But I don't believe that dancers need to rehearse and work 8-10 hours a day on their body and not training their mind.
Agreed, completely agreed. And first of all, thank you for sharing your story. I think when we say the struggles that we have had out loud, that it can be very powerful for other dancers and help them put their struggles into perspective. So thank you for sharing that vulnerable story. And I wholeheartedly agree. A good friend of mine is a strength and movement specialist. I may have gotten his title wrong, but he works with Boston Ballet and helps strength train and cross train their dancers. And he was saying to me, because he's also an Olympic athlete, he was a rower and a bobsledder. He said to me, Gina, dancers are the only breed of athletes that work so hard at this level without taking breaks. Because you would never expect a professional athlete to train in the morning and work all day long in order to go to bed and wake up and do it again the next day. And that was mind-blowing to me. First of all, to think of dancers as athletes, which are. We're athlete artists.
Totally.
Sure. Yeah. And then to frame it in terms of other professional athletes would never be this hard on their bodies, or they wouldn't be able to perform at the level that they do.
But you know why? Because here's my theory. There has been so much more research done in terms of athletes, their performance ability and availability and what it takes. Where dancers were just, pretty things standing on stage. And it has never been taken in consideration, the amount of work that's behind it, because, and that yet is also just a theory, because we don't see it producing millions and millions of dollars. And we're not reaching 7.8 billion people on the planet yet.
Yeah. Oh gosh, this is definitely could be a whole topic for a whole.
Oh, this is going to be a whole topic. Yeah. We should talk about that. Okay, back to self-care.
Yeah. So how can we tie these topics, these themes back into should we talk advice now or tips or?
Yeah, tips. So I would say, if you feel like the topic self-care is basically like oil on water for you, it feels completely against your beliefs or what you have been taught, then you are in the right spot to actually just taking it in. So our tip, or my tip here right now, would be to just ask yourself the question, what if self-care is not selfish? Like, what would that look like? And what would it feel like to you? Because if you can go through all the motions of taking a bath and getting a rub down, and maybe also putting up some boundaries and expanding or closing your circle of influence and not people pleasing. But if you're not behind it, and if you don't understand the why behind it, it is going to be a short-term solution and you're not going to integrate it in your life.
Love it. Love it. And that's why self-care is, when viewed from the perspective you just said, is so powerful, and not just a surface layer band-aid on a boo-boo, but really caring for yourself on the soul level. That's a great spot to start from.
Right.
And so then my tip would be more after you've arrived in the place where you feel your worth and you understand that it's not a selfish thing to focus on self-care. My tip would be to find what you really enjoy. If you're a morning person, build that into your morning routine. If you're a night person, build it into your evening routine. Find what works for you and do only the stuff you love. If you're not into meditation, then find something else. And by the way, you can meditate while you walk. It doesn't have to be a close your eyes, sit down event. But yeah, if you love to do what your self-care things are, then you will keep doing them. And that's the whole idea.
Beautiful. I think we should do a whole episode on like specific self-care tips.
Love
We'll do
it.
that at a later point. But meditating in the shower, by the way, is also that's how I started. You could not get me to sit down. Like there was so much going on in here that slowing down was not an option for me. The only way I could slow down was in the shower because there was that sound and the sensation. Like I wasn't feeling like I was not doing anything. I had to convince myself that, okay, taking a shower, I was doing something while meditating. Yeah, very busy up there. So I really truly hope that this was something that you can apply and perhaps has also risen some questions in your mind, or maybe you found yourself even getting a little upset at what we said. Good, because that is the first indicator that we actually pushed into a wound that needs healing, a place that where a belief is that could be rewritten that would serve you better. So with that said, we're sending you so much love. Thank you for listening and tuning in, and we wish you a wonderful day.
Yes. Take care, dancers.
Thank you so much for listening. If this message resonates with you, please pass it on to someone who needs to hear this right now. And if you like what you've heard, your feedback will go a very long way. If you just take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star review, that would mean the world to me. Till next time, point at yourself to rise to all that you are capable of.